Well, we're back with even more Shacknews Awards deliberations because we just are gluttons for punishment today. We are going to deliberate over the best PS5 game of the year. This is a game that released on PS5. Doesn't necessarily have to be exclusive to PS5. Doesn't necessarily have to be a first-party title. Usually is a first-party title, or at least an exclusive. But it's a game that you can play on PS5. That's the rules for this one. I'm gonna start with Chris. We got.
Guess I'll go with Ratchet and Clank.
Mm-hmm.
It looks great. It may not be the most innovative thing gameplay wise, but everything it did competently, and I also appreciated that it's the first game of the new console generation to use the power afforded to the machines for a gameplay enhancing reason, specifically the time warp jumps as the benefit of the solid state drive. It mostly just added to immersion, and it wasn't like a direct gameplay benefit, but it felt so cool. It made all the parts of the game feel seamless, and like you were actually, warping
Yeah,
from planet to other in a way that just would not be possible on other hardware.
It was
I
really
think
cool.
like
It
you
felt
you
like
bring
you were
yeah.
pulling like, oh, sorry to step on you also, but it did feel like you were like pulling other worlds to you and just
Mhm.
jumping right into them. I really did like that.
I think people take the tech behind that for granted, Chris. Like it's so seamless in the game. They're
Well,
like,
yeah,
oh,
the
that
more
must be.
things that look the way your brain would expect to them, it's easier for them to be out of sight, out of mind. Where
Mhm.
when you see graphics that look goofy or a face model like Grand Theft Auto Trilogy Remastered, everybody looks like the cowboys from the Primus video in that game. So it's easy to see what's wrong with their character models and why they shouldn't be smiling like that or why their eyes are made of porcelain. But, with something like Ratchet and Clank, where all the details are more realistic and refined, it may not be as easy to notice all the thousands of things happening in
Yeah,
concert to produce the final image.
and like I will say that from a gameplay standpoint, I don't think this is the most complex game ever created. It didn't really do much to change the formula from Ratchet and Clank, but to me, it was the first time in this new gen, this current gen, PS5, Xbox Series, whatever, that I was like, oh, this is what these consoles can do. Miles Morales was a very nice looking game, but it still was built on PS4 framework largely. This is the first time we've seen Insomniac make a game for PS5, and they are insanely good at
And
making video games.
of all the games to showcase a PS5, like we wouldn't have guessed that it would be a Ratchet and Clank game necessarily. Like we would have
Mhm.
expected it to be the new Horizon or the new God of War. But what they did with Ratchet and Clank was just so impressive. And I've mentioned it a few times, but you start to really see the scope as you get to the end. And as Nefarious starts to throw like dozens and dozens of enemies at you all at once. And it runs it so seamlessly
That's
without any load times. There's like
Yep,
massive landscapes. You don't see any pop in or anything that you would expect like out of the older generations. It's all loaded in. It's just
yep.
amazing to look at.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the number of enemies. That is a huge thing in that game. Like there are these little things that by themselves don't sound that impressive, but when you put them together in a package of emphasis, it's really something to behold. And I think I'm probably not voting for this. I think there was a better game that came out on PS5 this year, but uh, the technical side of this game
And,
is really
and
damn
and
impressive.
it might not have like the best weapons in a Ratchet game, but like I still had fun with a lot of the weapons, like including like the topiary sprinkler, where like it makes enemies into shrubbery. Like I thought that was pretty cool. That
Yeah,
was pretty fun.
yep. Hey, who wants to nominate Returnal?
I can talk
Nominate
about
it.
Returnal. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Donovan. You reviewed it, I think.
Yeah, I'll talk a bit about it, but I know you liked it a lot as well, David. That was a game that I had no like expectations going in. I don't play like I think Dark Souls is great, but like I was never into those like the super hard, you're gonna die 1,000 times games. But Returnal is just like excellent from top to bottom, and something we talked about on the staff a lot is kind of how it was one of the early PS5 games to feel really next gen, along with Ratchet and Clank. Just in the like the haptic stuff, I know that's kind of hit or miss for some people, but I love the way the environment feedback was, even the sound effects. Um, I love it. It sounds weird to say, but like I love the procedural generation of it, like where the environments are the same, but it's all kind of given to you in different layouts every time you go. Dying is punishing, but it also kind of feels like I always take a sigh of relief when I died sometimes because it's like, at least this time I might get like better weapons, or they screwed me on abilities last time. The combat feels really good. The atmosphere is great. The game's actually creepier than I thought it would be. The scene like when you're in the old home from like the 70s or whatever feels like it's straight out of the PT demo.
Yeah.
It's very good. So I would put it up
I
there.
really
for sure.
like it as well. I actually think it handles death better than the Soulsborne games. One issue with the Soulsborne games is when you die, you leave a bloodstain that has all your souls on it. And if you get back to it, cool. But if you don't, then you literally lost all the time you spent getting souls, which double as currency and XP. In this game, I feel like there's enough permanency from certain upgrades that you keep every time you die that when you die you're not really losing anything. I also like the map, like that the map straight up tells you, hey, these doors will take you through the main path, these doors are optional, so if you want to just like let's say you died to a boss and you want to just get back to the boss, you can just sprint through rooms, ignore enemies, just grab power-ups and go back to the boss and fight it again. I also just think like Donovan said, the haptics are great. Like I'm not really one for force feedback. I usually turn it off unless I feel it adds to an experience, but I feel like it does in Returnal, especially scanning things. I felt it was additive. I just love the atmosphere. It feels Geiger-esque. You know, it feels like straight out of Alien to me. Also, like we see a lot of genre splicing, but you don't see bullet hell mechanics implemented in games other than bullet hell shooters. And to add that sort of frenetic type of projectile based gameplay and a really nice dodge mechanic with it's actually more of like the dash that you can go through them, combining that with abilities like jumping and upgrading your weapons. That game feels really good to play. Firing feels good, dashing feels good, jumping, running, it just feels really, really good to play.
Yeah, I think it's great.
I
I
like
mean,
the game, and I think it's the best PS5 game.
Oh, you do?
I don't like the game,
But you think
but
it's the
I
best
think it's the best PS5 game. Like I can
like
look
in
at it,
terms of exclusives? Yeah.
I can look at that game, play through it, the level of complexity to the gameplay, the loop, like I can appreciate all that even if I don't like it. And yeah, to me it's the best PS5 game I played this year, like by far.
I really like Returnal a lot, but I think
Well,
that
I want to
we're
hear more
talking,
about why you like it, Blake, because I was actually that surprised me when you said you were into it. I didn't know if it would grab you, but I forgot about the fact that you tend to like sci-fi.
I love sci-fi
themed.
games and I love bullet hell games.
Mhm.
So it appeals to me on both of those ends. And well, and yeah, I also love Ridley Scott's Aliens and uh, stuff like that. I also am a huge fan of Event Horizon. And
Mhm.
I get notes of a lot of that stuff from the story and the environment. And I also got into Hades this year. And
Mhm.
Hades is another game where you die a lot and you don't feel like you're losing progression.
Mhm.
Yeah. So if I mean, it would take something like sci-fi Dark Souls to get me to like that genre, right? And it blends in enough stuff that isn't Dark Souls or Soulsborne or whatever you want to call the genre. Like it blends enough stuff on top of that to make it its own, and like I really appreciate that, and like I'm compelled, the story compels me forward, but at the same time I also think Ratchet and Clank is a much more universally approachable game.
Sure.
I think that's a game that you can have fun head to toe, like child to adult.
I
Yeah,
think
we didn't even get into the
really
story.
differs. I think where it really differs from Souls-like games is, you correct me if I'm wrong. You guys played way more Souls games than me. Souls games tend to be about knowing the path, you know,
Oh yeah.
knowing this enemy's going to
Enemy
attack me
patrol
from,
routes and
yeah,
yeah.
knowing, okay, this is all going to happen. I'm now prepared. There's an element of memorization to being a badass in those games.
Mhm.
Returnal throws that on its head by giving you procedural generation. And it's not drastically different, but it's different enough to me where I don't feel that same kind of malaise that I do when I'm struggling in a Souls game. I think that's a key differentiator that might have appealed to Blake.
It
Yeah,
has
there's
a
also
procedural generation level that like Hades had.
yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it does that, but you know who else that does that exceptionally well is Rogue Legacy, which is another game I love. So I guess it's just finding the right blend of things where like death doesn't feel as much of a hump to get over and over again. Like if a game can find that balance where like I can reset it and not feel like I've lost too much progress, that's gonna have more of an appeal to me because I am very like time is money. I only got so many hours to give to a video game. Like I'm kind of like that, you know. Like the older I get, the less time I have, literally, and I want to be investing that into things where I feel they aren't devaluing my personal time.
I thought Blake and Asif made a good point. Like I was thinking about what you said in particular, Blake, about accessibility with Ratchet and Clank, and how Asif, you said that even though it's not necessarily your type of game, you think it's the best PS5 game you've played. I didn't really hit on this until you two until I mashed your thoughts together, but I do think Returnal is the most accessible, quote unquote, one of those. I think it's a lot more accessible than Souls because again, like you don't feel like there is an element of permanency to your progress even when you die. Like that's why, Asif, you were texting me while you were playing, and I'm like, dying in this game is not really a big deal. And that's something I believe in Souls as well. But it is a bigger deal in those games than Returnal because Returnal, you know that you have like there are items you get that might add corruptions to you. Like it might like increase your dash cooldown by like 2 or 3 seconds, which can make or break an encounter. And then if you die, you're like, well, at least I got rid of all those corruptions, which you can do besides dying. But dying actually in this, like Donovan said, he would like kind of feel relieved. Like it is like a fresh start more than like, oh, this again sort of thing. But I think it does that really well.
I think the game did a great job of introducing you to the death mechanic. When you discover your own dead body and you pick up your old gun, I was like, that's solid storytelling.
And it's chilling. The voice acting is good, like throughout. Like it really feels like you're watching some sort of, maybe not an Alien sequel, but like a lateral step from Alien.
Raised by Wolves.
Yeah, or Raised by Wolves.
I actually watched Raised by Wolves right before I played this game. So yeah, that was definitely like in my mind. But David, you brought up something. You brought up the corruption, and I honestly thought that was the most unbalanced part of the game. The penalties versus the rewards. The penalties usually far outshone whatever I would get from picking up an item, and I think it ends up deterring from the game more than helping it. It needs to be way more balanced.
It's an interesting, I think, and a fair criticism. It harkens back to one of the elements of roguelike design that a lot of people don't like. And Diablo 1 did this. Where in Diablo 1 you could get cursed items like, oh, -10 to damage. Like, why would you use this? But the point is just to get rid of it. And I think that's valid, Blake, like I said, but my counterpoint to that would be that usually like you can get rid of corruptions, A, and B, they're pretty easy to get rid of. Like most of the criteria are like, oh, kill
Not all the time.
3 enemies. Not all the time, no, but usually the benefit that you get from the corrupt item is commensurate with what you have to go through, the hoops you have to jump through to get rid of the corruption.
Yeah, I don't know. I experienced like early on a corruption that like it took away health from me every time I picked something up. And all I had to do was pick up like 2 certain kinds of items, and I only found one on the entirety of the first level. And I will like going into the boss fight, it was like, do I want to switch out my weapons and like lose health that I'm gonna need during this boss fight, or like stick with a shotgun? And it kind of like screwed me over in that sense.
Again, that's
and
fair.
and I think that shouldn't exist at all. I think something like that just shouldn't be such extremes as far as like the cost reward analogy.
And
it sounds like it's more like a unlucky thing, kind of with the.
that is one.
I'm not really into roguelikes usually, but I am in the Souls. I have like a ridiculous amount of hours in Souls.
Same.
I've done some speed running and no hit runs for Souls.
I mean,
So
I'm gonna be really nitpicky, like, because this is like the best of the
that's
best
fair.
this
That's
year,
fair.
yeah. And I feel like
I think
Ratchet
a lot
and
of
Clank,
that. Go
sorry.
ahead.
I think Ratchet and Clank did what it did flawlessly. Honestly,
I mean,
I
it's a
enjoyed that game.
very different type of game, but
Absolutely.
I get what you're saying. Like
Two
that is
very
meant to
different
be
games.
two very
Yeah.
different
They're
games.
both very different games that take advantage of the PS5 in ways that other
Yep.
PS5 exclusives
They
do.
Well, let me
both
say
are
this
showpieces.
about Returnal. The corruption is part of the atmosphere and the story and the planet. Like that's the whole thing you're discovering, that everything is kind of working against you but can also be beneficial at the same time. It is tied to the story. It doesn't just feel like some sort of punitive type of mechanic, which is why I like it. And I don't know if you've noticed this, the items are color coded. Like blue items are always one sort of thing, green are always another. So you can avoid picking up a lot of items in the scenario that you mentioned, which again I think your complaint is valid, but I think it is part and parcel with the game's themes, it's the rest of its mechanics and the story it's telling.
I didn't
I'm
know
not
which
saying get rid
colors.
of the corruption. It's a good mechanic, but I'm just saying like make sure it's tooled and balanced properly, because it's already a difficult enough game.
Yeah.
I have a
They didn't
nomination.
need to make that difficult.
What you
Just
got,
before
TJ?
you, I was going to
Sorry.
say something real quick before
Yeah, go for it, bro.
we move on to the new game. This is a very interesting topic or category for me, because I think that, like, by letter, best game, right? Like, we just strip it down, best game. But something that I can't stop thinking about is that taking away best game and just looking at it as like showcase piece for the PS5, like we're talking about specifically the PS5. And for me, Ratchet and Clank is like what I think of when I think PS5 showcase game. And I'm not trying to say that it's better, because I mean, I'm still open to be swayed either direction at this point. It's just that that's something that won't leave my head, is like, I don't think like PS5 Returnal. I think PS5 Ratchet and Clank right now.
Can I say something to that though? Because I feel like when it comes to like a lot of my friends are like Soulsborne fans and stuff like that. I recommend a Returnal to them, I think, first, because I know they would actually play through it. But I think that was also something that being on PS5 hindered Returnal with.
Yeah,
because there's not as many PS5s. I think if this game had been on other consoles, it would have really taken off. I think there would have been a big kind of boom, especially for like the Soulsborne community and then folks who like would stream.
or if it was on
content.
PC.
Yeah.
You know, like even just being a PC PS5 release, I think would have increased the buzz around the game.
Yeah, I think it would have been one of those games that really took off, like when it first launched, and would have had a bigger stronghold. Whereas Ratchet and Clank is already established in returning. So I think that's a factor.
Yeah, before TJ jumps in here, Ozzy, I just have a question for you. Like,
Yes,
you reviewed Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart,
I did.
and you played through it, you beat it. Is there any reason to play it again?
There is a special weapon that you can unlock if you find all the little
Okay, so
unlockable
it's like
things
a
in each level.
yeah.
But in
But
terms of like extra story content, no.
Returnal has inherent replay value, and to me, that's like a huge aspect of what makes a game the best.
And to add on to that, there is actually a special ending that you can get if you beat the game. I think it's like 3 times or something. So
Yeah,
normally that sort of thing would be like, oh, I don't want to beat this same game 3 times. I'll just go on YouTube. But the play experience is so unique and diverse each time that I would do that without even thinking about it and realize, oh, special ending. And because I beat the game, I already wanted to, keep playing.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to bring up the concept of the challenge of Returnal versus the accessibility and ease of play in Ratchet. Like, they're very different games, but to me, value comes out of replayability more than being a shiny showpiece. I just wanted to throw that out there before TJ nominates.
Yeah, and like listening to all these conversations, like there is a game that stands apart from them where like Ratchet and Clank is easily the best graphics that I've seen on PS5, which is where I would probably be more inclined to vote for it, is in the
Absolutely.
graphics category.
Yeah.
And then Returnal is I see a lot of the smart decisions in Hades coming back in Returnal. But I also see a lot of the problems that come along inherently with being a roguelike, which have been discussed here as well. I'll tell you, the game on PS5 that was like the full package of looks, graphics, gameplay, story,
and interesting new mechanics, advancement forward for the studio was Deathloop. Deathloop is so freaking good from the standpoint of where it evolves the arcane formula past what they've done before, implementing mechanics from other games that work well, such as like a Souls currency element where you need to keep going with what you've got or you'll lose it all. Um, using their powers that we've seen in other arcade games, but like implementing them in new ways here, and then implementing new things that like you can go loud in this game. You can sort of go loud in other arcade games, but you get punished for it. You can go really loud in Deathloop, and it is satisfying.
That's
Deathloop is
actually
like,
what turned me off of Dishonored, was that I wasn't able to go loud. Like that I
Mhm.
could go loud that appeals to me.
Yeah,
I'm a
same.
meticulous person when it comes to arcane games because of that. And when I first approached this game, I started talking to Bill about it. I was like, this is hitting me like if Arcane did a Hitman game, because you have to find 8 targets throughout the day. You have a limited amount of, you have 4 periods of time in which to do it. Your main weapon in this game is information, discovering where everybody's going to be at any given time, learning their patterns and habits, figuring out the best way to knock them off, and then putting it all together into one day. I think that they handle the time travel narrative better than most fiction I've seen handle the time travel narrative. It's a really well playing grindhouse flick from top to bottom, put into a really well playing game that doesn't look the best, I would say, on PS5, but it does play like it looks good enough, and it plays better than most of the things I played this year.
And it's got some great detail too when it comes to character design. Like the voice acting in that game is awesome.
Man,
so
the
many-
banter between Colt and Juliana throughout the whole thing is just so damn fun.
Okay, I think those are probably all the nominations we're gonna have for this category, right?
Yeah.
Does anyone have anything else to say? I think we've discussed all these
So
pretty.
3 very, very good games.
Yeah, extremely good games.
And the funny thing is, probably 3 years from now, you'll be able to play Returnal on PC anyway if
I know,
Sony
right?
continues this trend. So
Yeah.
And definitely on Xbox.
And I think,
Yeah.
Denny, your point about Returnal probably flying under a lot of people's radars because of the platform exclusivity it's a valid point. I think these awards, why we're so thorough in playing games for consideration, is so we don't miss something like Returnal. And it's, as someone who doesn't like the game, I can still look at it and be like, yeah, that's a special game. Like, might not be for me, but it's very good. So yeah.
It's also kind of special because it reminds me of Demon Souls. I remember when I played that, I just felt like, man, why is nobody talking about this? And then like 5 years later, Dark Souls 2 was like on a huge banner above the LA Convention Center for E3. Like,
And this
I
was
feel
a
like
huge
Returnal
win
will
for
build.
It's a huge
Yeah.
win for Housemarque. They got acquired by Sony after this. Like, they're going to be
Yeah.
making some more like PlayStation was like, we like this so much, we want you to be here
Yeah.
forever. You know,
That's because they fucked up with Demon Souls and they don't want to do that again. Because they did. They were like, oh, this is junk. We're going to pass on publishing it. And then Dark Souls blew up.
yeah.
And that's why they did, like, they considered Bloodborne and the Demon Souls remake a mea culpa to FromSoft. Like, we were wrong. Let's do something awesome. You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Let's start the vote. I'm going to start with Chris.
Since I'm nominated, I'll stick with Ratchet and Clank.
Okay. I'm going to get my vote out of the way. I'm voting for Returnal. Blake.
Do I have a pass still? Can I pass?
Sure.
Just
Bill.
need one more time.
You know what? I came into this with my mind on Ratchet and Clank, but some of the explanations actually from Blake talking about the way they mix some of the mechanics from Souls games. I'm gonna go Returnal.
Okay. Ozzy.
It's so hard to find a Mario type of platformer, and for PlayStation to have kind of hit that with Ratchet and Clank last year, that makes to the point that I want to go back and play the old Ratchet and Clanks. Like I really loved Rift Apart, and it just had me grinning from ear to ear from start to finish. So I'm gonna say Ratchet and Clank.
Ozzy, I'm glad you brought up that Sony has struggled with platformers in the past. They have the Astrobot series, which is a cute game, and like they've had some success in the past.
They tried to do that platformer with Sackboy a few years ago. That didn't really pan out.
Just that opening scene in Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, the entire
What
time
a
I was like,
trip that whole opening is.
I was just sitting there and I was like, man,
it opens hard and it finishes strong. It
could
really
you
does.
imagine if, I know Nintendo will never do this, if they had hardware powerful enough to have a Mario with that level of graphics fidelity, it would be hard not to give that all the awards. So it's and I personally think the gameplay in the Mario 3D platformer is better than Ratchet and Clank. That's the one area where I'm not like super keen on Ratchet and Clank is the gameplay.
But the Ratchet and Clank gameplay was so good though.
It's good, but it didn't change enough for me. It's still the same formula.
But it scratched an itch, I gotta say. Like the
Yeah.
Ratchet and Clank, I wanted to play a game like that more than I thought I did. And like it really
talking about accessibility, like there is a mode, a version, I guess a mode in the game where you don't die. You know, so you talk about having a game on PS5 that's accessible to kids or anyone. Ratchet and Clank definitely did something in that respect. TJ, are you going with Deathloop?
Yeah, I'm staying with Deathloop. Like to your point just a second ago, Arcane upped their game so much on that.
TJ almost hit me with a chair with Deathloop. I like that came out of nowhere, had me thinking, "Wow, is that the best PS5 game?" Like he almost got me.
Best shotgun in the biz right now.
Greg.
That's hard because even though I don't like Souls games or didn't care for Returnal, like you guys make really good points on the gameplay, and it is some people's bag, and it does it when it does really well. At the same time, Ratchet and Clank is that like classic adventure platformer that PlayStation has always basically struggled with, especially in the new generation of platforming since PS4, right? Damn, it's hard. But after thinking about it, while everyone's been talking, I have to do Ratchet and Clank. That Saturday morning cartoon vibe, a classic, story with the villain over the top. I laughed several times when I was cutting Ozzy's review. Like, there's some really good one-liners in that writing in that game, and it was so.
Yeah, I didn't even make like enough of an argument for the story, but that story just hits all the right beats too.
I don't know how they made it. Like, how does Insomniac find the time to crank this out? Because it's insanely polished, and they were working on Spider-Man just last year.
I don't think they had as large a team on Miles Morales as they did on Ratchet.
Yeah.
They also put out DLC for Ghost of Tsushima and the remastered version.
That's Sucker Punch.
No, wait.
Overruled.
Yeah, let me get my... Sorry. Sucker Punch makes great games. Donovan, what you got?
Returnal.
This is a close one. Denny, what you got?
Yeah, I am going to go with Returnal. I think that the experience was more intimate for me, and I like the exploring and like the trying to figure out what's going on. The atmosphere was awesome. Ratchet is I feel like the quintessential next gen game. I felt like I was like, wow, this is PS5 when I was playing it. But I'm not as much into platformers. The story and humor was great, but it's definitely a game that I would enjoy watching on stream. I think more than playing usually. Whereas Returnal, I was really into trying to figure out a way to get to the next boss and stuff like that. And it holds up really well on replays. So that's my choice.
Nice. David, are you on Returnal here?
I am on Returnal. I think there's a lot of merit in Ratchet and Clank, and it's a game I'll be voting for in other categories. I just don't feel like it's this category for me.
I'm the exact same way. Like, different category, I'm going to push very hard for Ratchet and Clank, but I don't think it's like some groundbreaking game, like in its gameplay form. It's more just, I think Bill, you said it, like it's a showpiece for the tech inside of the PS5, and I think Chris touched on that too. Like, there's elements of Ratchet and Clank that I think people take for granted. It's a very fun, seamless experience. But yeah, Blake, what's your vote?
Is Blake going to be our deciding vote?
No, but Blake, what's your vote?
You know what? I think just Ratchet and Clank just struck a chord with me, man. I played it on my personal vacation, like 2 days in a row straight. That was like all I did was play Ratchet and Clank.
On your
And
big fancy new TV with HDR and 4K.
it was it looked and I think we've talked enough about how gorgeous it looked, but I mean I have never been a Ratchet and Clank fan. I'm not like a stand for the series or anything like that, and it just like it was the stars aligned this time around though. Like I loved this. I loved the story. I loved the way it looked. It didn't reinvent the wheel, but it didn't have to. And that's the thing. Is like I don't think a game in a like action adventure.
Are you voting for Ratchet and Clank?
Yeah, I'm voting for Ratchet.
Okay. Just wanted to know. I'm dumb. I might not have counted this right. Chris, Ratchet and Clank, right?
That is correct.
Blake, Ratchet and Clank.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, you were Returnal? Okay. Ozzy, Ratchet and Clank? Greg, Ratchet and Clank. Okay, so it's
Sam,
4.
Ratchet and Clank.
Sam, also Ratchet and Clank. Okay. I'm not an idiot. Well, I might be an idiot.
I think we're tied.
Yeah, Returnal. David,
Yeah.
Denny, Donovan, Bill, and me. TJ, you're the deciding vote. We're having a revote for people who did not vote for either of those two. It's a 5-5 tie, including Sam's vote for Ratchet and Clank. You are the decider.
I have to think about today and how these deliberations have gone. which annoyed me more.
Or maybe think about the games and which one's better.
They're so different is the problem. That's the issue. They're so incredibly different.
I get that, but they're both PS5 games. All 3 of these nominees were PS5 games.
Yeah.
That's what the hard part of these deliberations is comparing games from different genres together.
I said it before and I'll say it again. Asif, I'm kind of with you on Ratchet and Clank. I think it's a gorgeous game. I think it's a beautiful game, and I'm going to vote for it when it comes to categories that have to do with that. But the gameplay just, I don't know, something didn't click with me on that, where like it didn't feel. It's not a bad game. It's got great gameplay, but
it's a wonderful game.
It's just Ratchet and Clank again. Returnal.
But it's the fourth one.
Right. Returnal is just I appreciate what they've done, and I appreciate the amount of polish they've put on it on a PS5 game as sort of an indie studio. I'm gonna go with Returnal.
Woo! What a close one.
Yeah, I mean
That was real close.
Those are 2 of the best games that came out this year, really.
And maybe a lesson to our panel that you might not like a game, but it might still be the best game in the category. Just saying.
That name, though.
Good for thought. Good for thought.
Also, it sounds like Blake needs to play the Surge part too.
I see what you did there.
Just saying. Congratulations to Housemarque and Sony on that acquisition, and congratulations to everyone who worked on Returnal. You are our Shacknews PS5 game of the year 2021.
PS5 game
to the
is
moon.
Done.
Time is like a tide.